Brian Ettling. He is speaking from project number 7, researcher topic from the Toastmasters International Competent Communications booklet, I believe. And his evaluator this evening is Dave Domian. Dave, could you tell us Brian's objectives?
Yes, Mr. Toastmaster. Brian's objectives tonight are to collect information about a topic from numerous sources, carefully support his points and opinions with specific facts, examples, and illustrations gathered through his research. I think Brian just really wants to make a point here. I think he's going to try and teach us something, and he'd like to do it in a fun and enjoyable way and get us all involved.
All right. Thank you, Dave. Madam Timekeeper, this is going to be a little bit different, so you're going to have to watch. He has asked for 9 minutes for his speech. At the end of his speech, however, there will be a 5-minute audience participation, I'm assuming audience, question and answer. I mean, he could have asked questions of himself and then asked them, but it just says question and answer for, so after his speech is over, mark 5 minutes, and then do the red, yellow, and green lights as you normally would for a 5-minute speech, if that's okay. A little bit about Brian. Many people think of Brian as a park ranger from his working nearly 20 years. He doesn't look that old, my God. At Crater Lake National Park in Oregon. Not that he's old, I'm just saying he looks really, really young. However, he really wants you to think of him as a climate change communicator and speaker. This winter, he co-founded a climate change meetup group with over 50 members now called Climate Reality St. Louis. He currently writes his own blog, begreenstartingnow.com, and he's a contributing writer to the website climatebites.org. Brian hopes to provide a clear picture tonight of how scientists really perceive climate change. He also hopes to take 5 minutes to answer some of your questions to address your doubts about climate change. The title of Brian's speech is The Debate is Over. Please welcome Brian Ettling.
Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and fellow guests here tonight, who here is interested in free beer? And I understand some of us don't drink, so how about anybody interested in some free chocolate?
I'll pay for chocolate.
Well, I have unfortunately got some bad news, and feel free all to groan. I do not have any chocolate or beer with me here tonight. But you know, I heard something funny last December. I was talking to a scientist at Washington University, and he was telling me that whenever scientists get together, there's always a lot of arguing and debating about how they perceive the world. But there's one thing, though, that scientists can agree upon, which is free beer. Now, there's a few other things that scientists do agree upon, where the debate is over, such as scientists agree that the Earth is round and it revolves around the sun. There's also widespread agreement among scientists that gravity is happening even while we speak. There's also widespread agreement among scientists that dinosaurs roamed the Earth up to 65 million years ago. There's also widespread agreement among scientists that the Cubs will never win the World Series. Actually, that's a mistake. That's just among St. Louis scientists. I'm sorry about that. But seriously, there's also widespread agreement among scientists that smoking causes cancer. Or at least stunts your growth. It's actually a 40-year-old man right here. There's also widespread agreement among scientists that Neil Armstrong walked on the moon in 1969, in spite of what you may have heard from your crazy neighbor. There's also one more subject that I know of where scientists are in agreement. Any guesses what that is?
Climate change.
Yeah, it's actually climate change. Unfortunately, though, there are still a lot of people stuck on the idea that scientists are in disagreement whether humans are causing climate change. And how many folks agree with that? That think that scientists are still in disagreement about that? Well, you guys are not alone. There was a report that was issued by the Yale Project on Climate Change Communication on May of 2011, they released this report called Climate Change in the American Mind, where they actually surveyed Americans on their opinion of how they perceive the scientific agreement. And this is what they determined, that 39% of Americans actually think that most scientists do agree that climate change is real, but 40% of Americans still think there's widespread disagreement among scientists whether climate change is happening. 4% of Americans think scientists do not think climate change is real, and 18% are still undecided. However, just like the old TV show Dragnet, I'm here to present just the facts, ma'am. And the facts are that there is actually widespread agreement among scientists, especially climate scientists, that climate change is real and caused by humans. Well, how do we know this? Well, I'm going to present two of the most prominent studies about that here tonight. The first one was done by this gentleman, Dr. William R.L. Anderegg, out of Stanford University in California. He published this report in the Proceedings of the U.S. National Academy of Science, and he actually interviewed over 900 scientists. And they primarily had published each 20 papers on the climate. So he's going for the topmost climate scientists on the planet, and he determined that 97 out of 100 climate scientists and experts think that humans are changing global temperature. There's also a second study done by Dr. Peter T. Doran, and he's out from the University of Illinois in Chicago. He released his report in the Journal of the American Geophysical Union, and he actually interviewed over 3,000 climate scientists. And he determined that 96% of climate scientists are convinced that global warming is happening and caused by man, and only 4% are not convinced that global warming is happening. Well, I know what you're thinking right now. You're thinking, Brian, what about that 3 to 4% who still do not agree with climate change? Shouldn't we listen to them? And my answer is no. And I think the best response to this is from former California Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger. He said, quote, "If 97 out of 100 doctors say that my son is ill and needs medication, but 3 say, no he doesn't, he's fine, I'm going to go with the 97. It's just common sense. And it's the same with climate change. We go with the majority, the large majority." Now, speaking of large majorities, who here thinks that Toastmasters is the best group around to empower you to be a great public speaker? I would say that's probably around 98% here also.
Yeah.
Now, suppose that you were entering a Toastmasters competition, or even giving a speech for our club where you really wanted to win. Would you seek out the advice of someone who is skeptical and overly critical of Toastmasters, or someone who rarely attends meetings, or someone who attends meetings but never speaks, or someone who's constantly critical of everything going on in Toastmasters? Just kidding there, Howard. No, you and I know that if you wanted to win a speech, you would seek out a top member of the club, such as somebody like Alan Kirby, who just won the Area 4 contest, or our very lively and animated Carl Hendrickson, who unfortunately was not here tonight to see his own image. Well, this is no different with scientists. This is what the scientific peer review process is. Scientists submit their publications, their findings, and their presentations to their peers to be scrutinized. And after a lot of intense debate and scrutiny, an overwhelming majority of scientists have now determined that climate change is real and caused by humans. The debate is over among scientists. Even more, I like what Dr. Richard Alley said about this. Dr. Richard Alley is a climate scientist at Penn State University, and I got to meet him last December at the American Geophysical Union Conference in San Francisco. And I got to hear him say during a presentation that scientists are no longer debating whether climate change is caused by humans because it's no longer a useful discussion. Well, speaking of salty discussions, again, who here is interested in free chocolate?
Me.
Or how about free beer? Which is, again, one of the few things that scientists can agree upon. And again, we talked about here tonight how various studies show that upwards of 97% of scientists now say that climate change is real and caused by humans. But I realize, though, that the debate is not over among many of you. So now what I want to do is open it up for your questions for the next 5 minutes. Adam, I know you've been dying to ask me questions. I know you and I need to see opposite sides of climate change here.
It's not so much that I know whether or not there's evidence,
Uh-huh.
but I think you cheapen the argument when it's only climate science. You call them climate
scientists, yes.
scientists. Yet meteorologists who are well versed
Mhm.
in what's going on in the
Yeah.
environment, and paleontologists
Yeah.
who also have studied history do disagree with these climate scientists
Okay.
who created this whole model of climate science to match what they want to push, and I believe as a political argument. Another thing that I want
Can
to
I answer your first question then?
please answer.
Okay.
I just have, well, if you're calling me for the second one.
Yeah,
sure.
well, I want to answer your first one though. Okay. Well, two things about that. Adam, let me ask you: if you had heart surgery, if it was determined that you needed to have heart surgery, who would you go to?
I would talk to a cardiologist, and if there was 3 out of 100 cardiologists who I talked to who said, no, it's this, I would listen to them. And I would say, it's possible that the other 97 might have a different opinion than those other 3, but I would still listen to those other 3 to see if they might have a different idea, because sometimes the correct opinion comes from the minority.
And that does happen occasionally. But what we're aiming for here, though, too, is the topmost experts in this field here. And that's what this is about, is aiming for the topmost experts. And you mentioned meteorologists and paleontologists. They're upwards of 80% there, too. So it's a little bit smaller percentage than climate scientists themselves. But the vast overwhelming percent, again, meteorologists are saying that climate change is real and caused by humans. The same thing among paleontologists also. When you do general scientists, it drops by 80%, but still, you're talking about the vast majority of even non-climate scientists. But what I'm aiming for is the top experts in this field.
But when you completely shut out the opinion of a minority of scientists, whether they're minority
Well, and I've thought a lot about this, and I want to answer that directly here too. Because that is a good point of at what point do you not listen to the minority here? And let me ask you a question here. Suppose there was a Toastmaster who came to a meeting and he said, if we really want to be a great club, we need to meet 7 days a week, 3 hours a day. What would be your response to that?
No.
Yeah, let's have a vote. And let's suppose, what do you think the vote would be? No, we all have lives to live. And so we vote it down, we move on. But this person keeps on insisting that we meet 3 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Or we don't tell that person we don't want to listen to them.
Well, I'm answering your point here, Adam, because I've thought a lot about this here. So let's suppose this person keeps coming to meetings, and he says, we've got to meet. We've got to meet 3 hours a day, 7 days a week here. And then he said, well, we've already voted this out. He says, I've got a study from the club in Moose Jaw, Montana, that they were successful in doing this. And then okay, let's issue another study. This is what's happening in the scientific community. So they'll go with one study out of 100, and the other 100 say that all the other clubs in the country that tried meeting 7 days a week, 3 hours a day, what happens is that divorce rates went up. They no longer saw their children. They were getting fired from their jobs, so it didn't work. So this person keeps coming back week after week to say, to say that at what point do we have Jerry Paul escort them out? So that's what's going on. We have a few individuals who won't give up this argument, where the scientific community has moved on, just like the Earth being round and the Earth revolving around the sun. Now you have a question for me, Dee.
One of the scientists who did a lot of studying of climate change early on, who was from England, most of what he wrote has been debunked, and he also came out with an apology saying that his research was not necessarily as factual as it should have been.
Okay.
I understand what you're saying is that climate change is real. Of
Yes.
course, it's been around for, I mean, we broke a temperature record from 1881 the other day.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. My question is, would it not be better to present a program and have both sides?
Well, the problem is we've gone way past it, because it's like doing a program. Okay, let me answer your question here. Because it's like doing a program, having somebody up here doing a program calling, having an astronaut here, and then having the other side of somebody that wants to speak on the Earth being flat, where the science is actually that train is long left the station or on that.
But science is truth, and science needs to have both sides presented so that
And
we can make.
Oh, I'm totally with you on that. And unfortunately, my time is up. We could talk about that more later on.
Over that free beer.
Yeah, free beer. Well, I appreciate you guys letting me talk tonight about that.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Everybody, take a minute. Whoa, take a minute.